What's up, guys? We got a Ford 500. I think it's an '05. Double check that here in a second. Took the tire off, 19 millimeter lugs, just a little flat head to get that cap off, center cap. We're changing that alternator. Alternator's up in here with this big fat cover on it. Kind of a crappy job, gotta tell you. All right, let's get as much room as we can on this. I'm even gonna take this guy off. Just gonna pop these pop pins out. Sometimes they're a pain. Use some pliers or something, pry them off. Then we got these Phillips head guys right here, and we'll take the Phillips head out and then get this little cover off, and then I'll step by step you from there. All right, we got this sensor here. Push back on the tab, pull it out, and we've got this little Christmas tree up in here. We're gonna wiggle it on out of there. I'm gonna use two hands for that. That wiring harness comes back around to here. It's Christmas treed in right there too. I'm gonna use two hands for that. And we'll get this wiring harness out of the way. We disconnected the battery before doing this. 8 millimeter socket needed. Disconnect the battery. All right, here we go. Let's get the belt off the alternator. I already got it off. This is my setup. Woo! Had a little bar on the end of this ratchet. You gotta have like a thin ratchet to get up in there. If you got a thick backed 3/8 ratchet, it won't fit in between the body. So that's why we got the specialty tool for that. But that thin ratchet works. It fits up in there. A tool like this with a 3/8 instead of a half. So I got 3/8 on the other side, a little block, very thin. Get in those tight spaces. But if you got a thin ratchet like me, it'll work too. And turn that counterclockwise and it will release the tension on the belt. I used a bar because this tensioner is very tight. All right, now we're gonna work on getting that black plastic cover off the alternator. We've got just a little push pin right there next to that bolt. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. All right, little push pin. And then we got a bolt here and a bolt in the top right up there, or a nut. And yeah, we just got to get in there with some extenders and a ratchet, get that sucker out. I'll show you. All right, status update. Got both those bolts out. Was not hard at all. My combination for that, for the top one, I use this extender. Got a little wobble at the end. I love it. And you got a decent amount of room compared to what it looks like. Didn't take long at all to get both of those out. This was my combination for the lower bolt. And the whole stud with the nut came out. You can see it's pretty rusty there. That's no problem. The whole stud came out instead of just the nut. All right, next step. We are loosey-goosey on this. Let's work on getting that out. I think it's just held in with some push pins now. We'll get a long flat head up in there and get that push pin out. And I think there's one on the top too, like right here or something. I don't know, we'll figure it out. It's been a while since I've done one of these. All right, up underneath the car, that plastic actually encases the wiring harness. I'm pointing to it with my long screwdriver. See if we can get closer. There's a wiring harness on the back with a clip. I'm gonna use my long flathead to kind of pop that clip back. I can't do it with one hand, guys. I gotta drop the camera. But we gotta get that wiring harness off so we can take this black cover off. All right, let's go back up underneath the car. Past the exhaust here, and we've got the wiring harness off right here. It looks like it's still connected, but it's not. And then right above that is a 10 millimeter nut that holds the wire to the alternator. I've got my ratchet right on it. I've already broken it free. Not too hard to get to, a little uncomfortable, but bada boom. Get this wiring harness out of the way so I can show you it's not connected. There you go, it's facing you now. Now I'm just gonna spin that ratchet. A little uncomfortable, twisting my arm, but let's get that nut off. Then our black plastic will come off. All right, we got that black cover off. You could try to finagle it out of there. There's barely any room. If this tie rod was off, that would help. Or you could drop the engine cradle a bit. I'm just gonna go with what we got right now. I twisted it and shoved it to the side and pushed it back. Now I'm gonna get that a bolt off, and I think there's another one up top, or no? I think it's just that one. All right, let's get this guy off. 15 millimeter on those, by the way, if I didn't mention. There we go, third stud out. If it doesn't come out all with the whole stud and just the nut, you're gonna wanna get that stud out of there. There is a hex on the back of here. And what you can do is put a socket on it after the nut's off. If the nut just comes off and not the whole stud, you can put a socket on the stud and twist it off. All right, so that alternator just fell down, and then I twisted it, and as you can see, we can almost get it out of here. Almost. We got an ear right here. So we got to figure out what we want to do to get it out of there. Will we have enough room if we take the tie rod and just loosen it and pop it out of its socket? Make this fall down a little bit? We might. Or are we going to need to loosen the engine cradle a little? I don't know. I'll tell you how it goes. All right, here we go. Tie rod's off. This one was real crusty. Wire brushed it, put PP Blaster on it, but it just wanted to keep spinning. So I put a 10 millimeter socket on the top and used my ratcheting wrench. See, the 10 millimeter keeps the stud from spinning. Whoop, there goes the alternator. So I put the 10 millimeter up top, keep the stud from spinning, and then spun that nut off. And as you can see, the alternator plops out. I also cut the wheel all the way to the right so that it would suck that in further. And now we have all this room. The other way to do it is to lower the cradle, bolt here, but support your cradle at the same time, some jacks or something. I got stands. But we went the tie rod route, and it gave us just enough room to come out. Now let's unbox our new alternator, get it set up in there, and get that one bolt in that we need to put in. We got our new alternator in there. It took 20-30 seconds of finagling, you know, to get it lined up right. Being by myself, I couldn't get this back one started while holding the weight of the alternator. This front one was easy. So we put all 3 bolts in, but we're only going to tighten up this one and then take the other 2 out. That way we know it's lined up. So we're going to tighten this one up. And yeah, a lot easier with this tie rod out of the way. I recommend doing that right from the get-go. All right, so I'm going to tighten up this bolt right here. Then take out the bottom and top one. They're just on there by hand. And then get this, flip this cover. It's going to take a little bit of maneuvering. Flip this cover back on there. Let's do it. All right, we got that cover back on and the bolt started. That was pretty easy. And we got this flap here. It kind of ripped out of the spot right there. So that might be a little bit of a pain to pop that. All that does is cover up the wiring up here. So, I mean, if you want to, just take it off. Should probably be putting it back on, though. All right. So we got to plug our wiring harness back in. That just snaps back in. We got to put our 10 millimeter bolt back on that wiring harness up there. That shouldn't be too hard at all. Pretty easy, step by step here. Tighten up our 2 bolts here. I don't have them tightened up yet. We're going to use those extenders to help us out, get the right length. And then put the belt back on once everything's up and connected. Don't forget about your wiring harness to your crankshaft sensor. Send that back around where it goes. And I've kept my belt routing all the same. All I did was pull it off the alternator. So I'm going to stretch this out to the alternator and compress that tensioner pulley, just like we took it off. It's still on there to get me the slack to go around there. That might be the time I want a helper. to compress that for me while I slip the belt over it. Yeah, we just put everything back together. And then with this tie rod end, you know, we're probably gonna have to use this to tighten it up. Same trick. If that tie rod end does not come out for you from here, give it a few smacks with a hammer right there on that ear and it should plop out. But yeah, that's about all my notes. Put the tire back on, put our little flat back on, call it a day. Hook that battery back up. Take care, thanks for watching.